Steelbone was a patchwork of rusted metal and frayed cables, a city born from the scattered remnants of forgotten worlds. It drifted aimlessly on a sea that was more poison than water. Waves lapping against hulls of scavenged vessels fused together in a precarious balance. At the heart of this shifting scrap, Kael knelt beneath the sputtering engine of the city's main power core. The acrid scent of burnt metal burned his nostrils, mingling with the ever-present stench of chemical runoff and decay. His hands were steady, stained dark with grease and oil as they worked to rewire the corroded circuits holding the fragile heart of Steelbone together. Each spark that flickered from his tools was a small victory against the inevitable collapse. Kael's dark hair was streaked with early grey, a testament to years spent battling not only the merciless sea but the ghosts of his past. His eyes, sharp and alert, flickered with a fierce intensity, reflecting both the weight of responsibility and the haunted memories he carried. Around him, the city groaned and creaked, a living beast made of scrap and hope. The marketplace nearby buzzed with the daily hustle of the city's inhabitants. Children with soot-smudged faces darted between stalls patched with rusted sheet metal, their laughter a fragile thread of normalcy woven through the harshness of their world. Vendors shouted over the din, bartering for scraps, medicines, and the rare clean water that was the city's most precious commodity. The air was thick with tension, a constant undercurrent of anxiety about the city's failing engines and the relentless encroachment of the toxic sea. Mira was aflame within this grim tableau. Her fiery red hair caught the dying sunlight as she paced through the market square, her green eyes flashing with a mixture of impatience and fierce loyalty. She was short and muscular, every movement coiled with the precision of a fighter and the unyielding spirit of someone who refused to be broken. Her quick temper was well known, but so was her unwavering dedication to those she considered family. "Kael," she called out, threading through the crowd to where he emerged from beneath the engine's belly, face streaked with grime and sweat. "We can't keep patching holes. The engines won't hold much longer. We need a plan that gets us off this sinking scrap heap." Kael wiped a hand across his brow, eyes narrowing as he met her gaze. "I'm working on it, Mira, but we need something more than hope. Something real." Their conversation was interrupted by Joran, who approached quietly, clutching a folded piece of weathered parchment. His pale face was framed by tangled hair, and his cracked glasses reflected the dim light of the workshop. He spread the parchment on a nearby table, revealing a map marked with faded symbols and annotations in a language long forgotten. "Look at this," Joran said softly, tracing a finger over a symbol at the edge of the map. "It points beyond the forbidden waters. There's talk of an artifact, something old and powerful that could stabilize Steelbone's engines, maybe even save the city." Mira's eyes narrowed skeptically. Forbidden waters are forbidden for a reason. Many who ventured there never returned. Kael's jaw tightened. "If we stay here, waiting for the engines to fail, none of us will survive. This artifact, it's our best chance." In the background, Lena tended to a wounded child. Her gentle hands and warm smile a stark contrast to the harsh environment. Her sun-kissed skin and calm demeanor made her a beacon of hope amidst the despair. Nearby, Grav adjusted the heavy weaponry attached to their scavenger vessel. His broad shoulders and scarred face a reminder of battles fought and survived. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting Steelbone into shadow, the city's failing heart pulsed faintly beneath the surface. The crew gathered quietly, the weight of the decision before them settling like a stone in their chests. Beyond the toxic haze, the unknown waited, harsh, unforgiving, and dangerous. But it was also their only hope. Kael stood on the deck of their vessel, gaze fixed on the horizon where the sea met the sky in a blur of sickly green and rust. The engines coughed beneath his feet, a reminder of time slipping away. He tightened his grip on the railing, drawing strength from the crew behind him, his found family, each scar and story intertwined with his own. "We sail at dawn," he announced, voice steady despite the storm of doubts within. "For Steelbone, for survival." The city whispered around them, a fragile giant adrift on a sea of poison, holding its breath for the voyage that might save Etor, be its final undoing. As night fell, the stars were obscured by the toxic haze. But somewhere deep in the darkness, a spark of hope flickered, fierce, fragile, and unyielding. The journey was beginning. Lanterns hung from exposed beams, their flickering light dancing across faces etched by years of hardship and unyielding resolve. At the center, Kael stood tall, though his lean frame bore the weariness of countless battles fought both outside and within. His dark hair, streaked prematurely with grey, caught the dim glow as his sharp eyes scanned the gathered crew. On a battered table lay a map, crudely drawn yet unmistakably precise, marked with symbols and routes that hinted at a world beyond the known scrap sea. The artifact's location was etched boldly just beyond the forbidden waters, a place whispered about in fearful tones, a boundary few dared cross. Kael's voice cut through the low murmurs, steady and resolute. "This is our chance," he said, "to save Steelbone from the decay that threatens to swallow us whole." Mira stood near the back, her fiery red hair ablaze against the cold metal backdrop. Her green eyes flashed with a mixture of excitement and defiance. She stepped forward, her voice rising above the hesitant whispers. "Chance or gamble, Kael. We don't know what waits beyond that line, and you expect us to sail headlong into it without knowing what we're facing." A ripple of agreement and dissent spread through the crew. Some nodded, their faces tight with anxiety. Others exchanged worried glances. Kael met Myra's challenge with a measured gaze. "I don't ask for blind faith, just trust in what we've built together. We've survived worse." Jorin, ever quiet, sat slightly apart. His pale fingers traced the faded symbols on the map, his cracked glasses catching the lantern's light. "The artifact. It's not just a relic," he murmured. "Ancient tech, possibly from before the seas turned toxic. It could hold the key to stabilizing Steelbone's failing engines, or it could destroy us if misused." His words hung heavy in the air. Lena, soft-featured and serene despite the tension, placed a reassuring hand on Jorin's shoulder. "We face risks, but hope is a flame worth protecting," she said gently. Grab's broad frame loomed near the entrance, his scarred face set in grim determination. "We'll need every ounce of strength and skill. Those mechanical beasts out there aren't just stories. They're real, and they're watching." Outside, the city's usual cacophony was underscored by an ominous, mechanical hum that sent shivers through even the hardiest scavengers. The toxic mist curled around the edges of Steelbone like a living shroud, muffling sounds but amplifying whispers of the Warden's growing influence. Rumors of his enforcers prowling the outskirts cast a long shadow over the fragile hope kindling within the scrap walls. As the meeting drew to a close, Kael's gaze lingered on his crew, flawed, fierce, and fiercely loyal. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, dangers both known and unseen. But in that moment, amidst the flickering light and whispered fears, a spark of unity kindled. The journey beyond the forbidden waters was no longer just a possibility. It was a necessity. Myra's challenge, Jorin's revelations, Lena's calming presence, and Grab's steadfast readiness wove together a tapestry of resolve. Yet beneath it all lay the unspoken question gnawing at their hearts. Could they truly trust one another and themselves when the sea and the warden threatened to tear them apart? The echoes of the past whispered through Steelbone's scrap corridors, carrying with them the weight of lost lives and shattered dreams. But they also carried a promise, a chance to forge a new future against all odds. And so, beneath the dim lantern light, the crew prepared to face whatever the toxic sea would throw at them, bound by a fierce, bittersweet determination that refused to break. The shadows outside lengthened, and the distant clatter of metal beasts stirred unease. But inside, a fragile hope took root. The voyage was inevitable. The question was who would survive to tell its tale. Grav's broad shoulders hunched over the vessel's hull, a battered collection of welded plates and scavenged machinery that was their only hope. His hands moved with practiced precision, tightening bolts and securing patchwork reinforcements as sparks flew from his torch, casting flickering shadows that danced across the rusted surfaces. Around him, the harsh tang of burning metal mingled with the acrid stench of the sea, a reminder of the world they fought to survive in. Lena moved calmly through the chaos, her presence a balm against the city's harshness. Her satchel clinked softly with jars and bundles of herbs, the scent of lavender and antiseptic, a fragile thread of hope in the stale, toxic air. She knelt beside crew members nursing scraped arms and bruised shoulders, applying poultices and whispering reassurances. Her warm smile was a rare light in Steelbone's grim reality, a promise that even amid decay, life still held meaning. Nearby, Kael stood silent and watchful, fingers stained with grease as he examined the vessel's engine components. His lean frame seemed almost fragile against the sprawling scrap, but his eyes were sharp and alert, reflecting the weight of the responsibilities he bore. Every creak of the failing engines echoed the city's precarious fate, every loose bolt a threat to their survival. He worked methodically, the scars of past losses etched into the lines of his weathered face. Myra's fiery energy exploded into the cramped workshop like a spark igniting dry tinder. Her red hair was a blaze of defiance as she confronted Kael, her green eyes flashing with impatience and passion. "We can't wait any longer," she insisted, voice sharp as broken glass. "Every moment we spend patching and planning is a moment lost. We need to move fast, or Steelbone dies." Kael's jaw tightened. "Rushing will only get us killed out there. I'm not willing to gamble with the crew's lives on a hope and a prayer." "Hope is all we have left," Mira shot back, stepping closer, her fists clenched. "If you can't see that, then maybe you've already given up on us." Tess, Myra's young protege, lingered in the shadows, watching the exchange with wide eyes. Agile and quick, she was eager to prove herself, ready to navigate the toxic storms that awaited them. The tension in the room was thick, but beneath it lay a fragile respect. Kael's leadership was challenged, but not dismissed. As the crew gathered at the prow of their vessel, the endless expanse of the toxic sea stretched before them like a churning beast. The sky was a slate grey, heavy with the promise of storms, the faint hum of Steelbone's faltering engines fading into the distance. Tess adjusted her gear with trembling hands, her bright eyes scanning the horizon. The city seemed to hold its breath, the fragile balance of scrap and hope suspended in the moment before departure. In that silence, the crew stood united by necessity and determination, ready to face what lay beyond the forbidden waters. The voyage ahead would test their trust, their skills, and their very will to survive. But for now, as the first creaks of the vessel's engines stirred the heavy air, they took their first tentative steps into the unknown, bound together by the fierce, bittersweet determination that was the heartbeat of Steelbone. Kael stood at the bow, eyes scanning the horizon where the sickly green waves of the toxic sea licked the underbelly of a churning, sulphurous sky. The sun was a pale, flickering orb behind a veil of poisonous clouds, casting everything in a muted, jaundiced light. Around him, the crew busied themselves with last-minute checks, their faces drawn tight with anticipation and latent fear. "Steady now," Kael murmured, more to himself than anyone else, fingers tightening around the railing that was scarred and rusted from years of salt and acid. His lean frame tensed beneath the patchwork leather coat that bore the marks of countless repairs. The weight of the city, the lives aboard, and the promise of salvation all pressed down on him like the thick, choking air. Behind him, Myra darted among the decks, her fiery red hair a wild blaze against the dull metal. Her sharp green eyes flicked from one crewmate to another, urging efficiency, readiness. Her movements were quick, almost restless, a stark contrast to Kael's measured calm. She caught his eye briefly, the unspoken challenge clear. "We can't afford to hesitate." Joran sat in the cramped, dimly lit cabin, poring over yellowed schematics and ancient symbols inked on brittle parchment. His cracked glasses caught the glint of a flickering lantern as he traced a finger along a faded map of the sea floor. "This buoy," he said quietly, pointing at a cluster of markings, warns of shifting currents and mechanical predators. "It's old, but the warnings still hold." Kael nodded, stepping inside. "Keep us ahead of danger, Joran. Your knowledge could mean the difference between life and death." Outside, the toxic sea roared a deep, guttural sound like the breath of some great, sleeping beast. The waves churned with unnatural colors, swirling greens and sickly yellows that stained the hull with every crest and crash. The wind carried the faint hum of distant mechanical growls, the telltale sign of the beasts that prowled these waters, metallic creatures born of scavenged parts and dark technology, remnants of a world lost to ruin. Tess, the young scout, crouched at the prow, her lithe form poised to react, eyes darting to every shadow and ripple. Storms brewing ahead, she called out, voice tight with focus. And something else, movement in the water. Grav, standing near the engine room hatch, grunted in acknowledgement. Beasts, their clothes. Suddenly, the water erupted. A monstrous mechanical beast burst from the toxic depths, its jagged metal limbs scraping sparks against the hull. Its glowing red eyes locked onto the vessel like a predator zeroing in on prey. The crew sprang into action. Mira grabbed her weapon, shouting orders, while Kael barked commands to steady the ship. "Brace for impact." Kael yelled, gripping the helm. The beast lunged, claws scraping and teeth gnashing, but the crew's practiced coordination held. Grav unleashed a barrage of heavy bolts, their clanging against the beast's plated armor echoing through the hull. Lena moved swiftly among the crew, tending to scrapes and bruises as the adrenaline surged. Joran, eyes wide, shouted from his post, "The beast's joints are vulnerable. Aim for the hydraulic lines near the elbows." Mira nodded sharply, her combat prowess on full display as she led the counterattack with brutal precision. The beast screeched, metal grinding against metal, before retreating into the murky depths with a final, ominous growl. The ship rocked as the waves surged, the crew gasping for breath and exchanging glances heavy with unspoken relief and lingering dread. Below deck, the lantern light flickered over faces pale from the close call. Kael met Myra's gaze, a silent acknowledgement of their shared survival and the battles yet to come. "This is only the beginning," Kael said quietly. The sea stretched endless and unforgiving before them, a toxic wilderness where every shadow held danger, and every moment was a test of will. Yet, In the heart of this drifting scrap city and its determined crew, a fierce, bittersweet determination burned bright hope against the desolation. As the vessel pressed forward, the crew's bonds, forged in fire and peril, tightened. Mistrust lingered beneath the surface, but so did an unyielding resolve. The voyage into the unknown had begun, and with it, the fragile promise of salvation. The toxic horizon beckoned, and Steelbone's fate hung in the balance. But what lay beyond the swirling green waves? And would the crew's strength be enough to survive the trials awaiting them in the endless sea? The journey was far from over. The endless sea around them hissed and bubbled, the poisonous waters ever restless beneath the fragile scrap platforms. On the deck of their battered vessel, Kael stood rigid, eyes narrowing toward the horizon where ragged sails began to appear like dark wraiths against the dimming light. Scavengers, Mira growled, her voice taut with warning. Her fiery red hair whipped in the acrid wind as she crouched beside Kael, scanning the approaching silhouettes. Not like any we've seen. These carry weapons and they're coming fast. The crew scrambled to their stations, the familiar clang and creak of metal filling the tense air. Joran adjusted his cracked glasses, fingers trembling as he readied the ancient tech scanners, hoping for any advantage. Lena moved swiftly, her satchel of herbs and medical supplies slung at her side, ready to tend the wounded. Grav hefted a heavy weapon, his broad shoulders squared against the coming storm. Tess, young and lithe, darted to the mast, eyes sharp for the approach of the enemy. They're closing in, she called, voice edged with a mix of fear and excitement. Kael's gaze hardened. The warden's reach was extending, and these scavengers were no mere opportunists. They were enforcers, part of a growing force meant to choke out outsiders and tighten control over the toxic sea's dwindling resources. Hold formation, Kael ordered, voice low but commanding. Wait for my signal. We don't want to give them an easy fight. Mira's eyes flicked to Kael, a spark of defiance flaring. We don't have time to wait. They'll be on us before you finish the order. Patience, Kael said, though doubt gnawed at him. His trust in the crew had always been his anchor, but recent strains bore heavily on his soul. The hostile fleet surged closer, sails flapping like torn wings. Suddenly, the first shot rang out, a jagged burst of steam-powered fire that sent splinters flying. The scavengers were ruthless, their weapons crude but deadly, their movements coordinated. Now, Kael shouted, and the crew sprang into action. Mira was a whirlwind of controlled fury, darting between enemy lines with calculated strikes. Her combat skills, honed in the crucible of Steelbone's harsh realities, shone as she dispatched foes with brutal efficiency. Cover left flank, she barked, rallying the crew amid the chaos. Grav's heavy weapons roared, tearing through the air as mechanical clanks and hisses erupted around them. Joran, though physically weaker, provided crucial support by disabling enemy contraptions with deft precision. Amid the battle's cacophony, Kael's eyes searched his crew. A flicker of hesitation here, a brief glance exchanged their small signs that stoked the embers of his growing mistrust. Had their long ordeal fractured their unity? Was their descent beneath the surface? His mind flashed to past losses, to the family he once had and lost to the toxic storms, and the scars that burdened his heart. He clenched his fists, pushing the shadows aside. Now was not the time for doubt. The battle raged on, a brutal test of wills and skill. The hostile scavengers, though fierce, faltered under the relentless defense. Mira's leadership in the field and the crew's cohesion turned the tide. When the last enemy vessel drifted away, burning and broken, the crew stood, panting, battered but victorious. Lena moved swiftly among them, tending to wounds with gentle hands and soothing words, mending both flesh and spirit. But as the adrenaline faded, the weight of unease settled in. The distant roar of mechanical beasts echoed across the toxic sea, a grim reminder that the Warden's enforcers were tightening their grip. The battle was not over, it was only beginning. Under the sickly glow of the fading light, Kael gathered his crew. "We survived today," he said, voice steady but laced with warning. "But the shadows on our horizon grow darker. We must be stronger together." Mira stepped forward, meeting his gaze. "We're not just survivors, we're a family, and families fight through the worst." A fragile hope flickered amid the scars of battle, but the question remained. Could their found family withstand the growing storm of threats, both outside and within? As the toxic sea lapped hungrily at the edges of Steelbone, the crew braced themselves for the trials to come, steeling their hearts against the shadows stretching over the horizon. The night deepened, and the wind whispered warnings through the creaking scrap city. The glow from distant fires flickered like dying stars, and somewhere beyond the dark waves, the Warden watched, his red lenses gleaming with a cold, unyielding fury. Joran sat hunched over a battered holoscreen, the pale blue light flickering erratically as he carefully traced the faded lines of an ancient schematic. His cracked glasses caught the glow, magnifying the intricate details of the designer map of interlocking gears and conduits that pulsed with a long-forgotten purpose. "Look at this," Joran murmured, voice barely above a whisper, breaking the silence that had settled over the crew like a dense fog. Around him, the others had gathered, drawn by the gravity in his tone. Lena shifted closer, her sun-kissed skin glowing softly in the dim light, a gentle smile easing the tension on her face. Kael leaned forward, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion etched into his lean features. "What is it?" "It's the artifact," Joran said, fingers trembling as he highlighted a segment on the schematic. "Not just some relic. This shows it's part of a system-ancient technology designed to regulate the sea itself, to keep the toxic waters from overrunning everything." A murmur rippled through the group. Myra's fiery red hair caught the flickering light as she crossed her arms, skepticism and hope warring in her piercing green eyes. "So it's not just a power source," she said, voice sharp. "It's a key, but if it's that powerful, no wonder the Warden wants it." Grav grunted from the corner, his broad shoulders tense. "And no wonder it's guarded by those mechanical beasts. They're more than just machines, they're sentinels." Lena nodded, her fingers brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Knowing this, it means our mission is even more important, but also more dangerous." Kael's gaze darkened, the weight of responsibility settling heavier on his shoulders. "We need to be ready, not just for what's out there, but for what this artifact could mean." As the crew absorbed the revelation, Lena moved among them, her hands steady and warm as she tended to bruises and cuts sustained in their last encounter. The faint scent of crushed herbs filled the cramped space, mingling with the salty temps of the sea air that seeped through the cracks in Steelbone's hull. "You're all stronger than you think," she said softly, meeting each pair of eyes with a nurturing warmth. "And we'll face this together." The words were a balm to frayed nerves, a reminder of the found family they had forged in the crucible of hardship. Even Kael, who often bore his burdens alone, allowed himself a brief moment of solace in Lena's steady presence. Outside, the city of scrap creaked and shifted, the failing engines groaning under the strain of endless drift. The toxic sea